When you focus on yourself and stay silent, you stop chasing approval and start building power. Silence sharpens your thinking. Solitude reveals your direction. While others waste energy reacting to noise, you rise quietly, becoming stronger, clearer, and more dangerous. You grow in silence, you win in silence. The loudest victories are born in the quietest rooms. In a few moments, I will teach you how to focus on yourself and stay silent to build strength, clarity, and control. When you work in silence, you command respect without demanding it. You've seen it. The loudest person in the room is rarely the one others trust. The one who boasts, brags, and tells everyone what they plan to do often does nothing. But the quiet one, the one who just shows up and builds, that's the person others quietly start watching, not because of what they say, but because of what they become. Silence is your power, not because words are weak, but because results speak louder. When you stop telling people your every move, you stop inviting their doubt, their delay, and their distractions, you take full command of your energy. But why does silence matter so much? Because in silence, your plans grow roots. Without noise, you hear your own intuition clearly. You protect your dreams from early judgment, even from your own fear. A goal shared too early can die in the hands of someone who doesn't see what you see. So how do you begin? By making your progress private. You rise earlier and tell no one. You stay late and expect no praise. You sharpen your mind like a blade, not to show off, but to be ready. You stop proving and start improving. Now picture this. Two workers on a field. One yells about the seeds he's going to plant. The other bends his back, digs in silence, and sows without saying a word. Months later, whose crop do you notice? The one who made noise or the one who made progress? Are you building quietly or broadcasting blindly? Do you let your silence grow strength, or are you still waiting for applause to begin? Respect isn't something you demand. It's something you attract. By doing the work when no one's watching and doing it right. When your results arrive, they'll announce you better than words ever could. Your power increases the moment you stop explaining yourself. You don't owe an explanation for your ambition. You don't have to justify why you train harder, aim higher, or say no to mediocrity. The more you explain yourself, the more you dilute your strength. Because those who misunderstand you aren't owed your energy, they're just evidence that you're rising. The truth is, explaining weakens intention. Every time you break your path into pieces for someone who doesn't see your vision, you rob yourself of the focus to finish the mission. Some won't understand you, not because you're wrong, but because they've chosen comfort over growth. You must not follow them. But why does silence serve you better? Because it draws a line. It says, I know what I'm doing, and I don't need your approval to do it. That kind of inner clarity shakes the world without shouting. You stop explaining by replacing explanation with execution. You wake up and act. You reject conversations that serve no purpose. You stop defending your path and simply walk it. You let your outcomes, not your words, make your case. Picture a young apprentice in a blacksmith shop. One talks all day about becoming a master. The other listens, learns, strikes metal, and builds. Months later, who do you trust to forge your sword? Are you still trying to convince others you're serious? Or are you letting your seriousness do the talking? You are not here to be understood by everyone. You are here to understand yourself so deeply that no outside opinion can shake your resolve. That's when your power begins. When you stop explaining and start becoming. Growth begins the moment you withdraw from the noise. There's a kind of noise that drowns dreams. Gossip, jealousy, chatter from people who aren't doing anything, but have an opinion about everything. And if you're not careful, that noise becomes your environment. Then it becomes your mindset. Then it becomes your life. Silence isn't escape, it's elevation. When you withdraw from the noise, you don't become less social. You become more sovereign. You start thinking clearly. You start choosing what deserves your attention instead of reacting to what's loudest. But why does stepping away matter? Because the world rewards clarity, and clarity is born in silence. Most people can't hear themselves think. They're too busy absorbing everyone else's fears. And if you absorb fear, you'll act in fear. But if you protect your silence, you'll plant boldness. So how do you withdraw? You guard your time like it's gold. You avoid rooms where ambition is mocked. You spend evenings reflecting instead of reacting. You study in private, improve in secret, and sharpen your discipline when no one's clapping. Now imagine this. Two warriors are preparing for battle. One is in the crowd, shouting, drinking, laughing. The other is alone, training in a cave, quiet, focused. When the fight begins, which one do you trust to win? Are you living in your cave or still caught in the crowd? Do you choose silence to grow or noise to be seen? The silence you keep will one day shout on your behalf. Withdraw from the noise and you'll find the signal. Withdraw from the crowd and you'll meet your purpose. You don't need permission to rise. You need conviction. Nobody is coming to crown you. Nobody is going to hand you your worth. You must rise on your own terms. And when you do, you'll notice something. Those who doubted you will stay silent, and those who believed will already be walking beside you. But people wait. They wait for applause, for approval, for a moment that feels just right. They wait for someone to say, "You're ready." But readiness isn't granted. It's chosen. Why do people hesitate? Because they fear judgment. They're afraid of stepping ahead without a chorus cheering for them. But those who win, they walk forward anyway. Not because they're fearless, but because their conviction is louder than their doubt. You begin without approval by deciding your value privately. You set your standards high and follow them whether anyone's looking or not. You take small steps with absolute certainty, and every time you act despite fear, you strengthen your inner authority. Picture a sculptor chipping away at a stone. No one believes it'll be anything, but the sculptor sees what it will become. He doesn't argue, he chisels, until one day others gather around, not to doubt, but to admire. Are you still waiting for the crowd, or are you building in solitude? Do you act like you're already worthy, or do you shrink when nobody validates you? Stop waiting. You don't need a spotlight to begin. You need resolve. When your conviction becomes greater than your need for permission, nothing can stop you from rising. The less you speak, the more you hear. What matters most, people fear silence. They rush to fill it with words, quick thoughts, scattered opinions, casual gossip, endless talk about dreams they've never built. They don't realize that every unnecessary word they utter drains power from their presence. But you must do the opposite, because when you speak less, you gather strength. You learn, you observe, you prepare. You learn nothing while you're talking. You only reaffirm what you already know. But when you're quiet, truly quiet, you open a door into others, into the situation, into yourself. And through that door, wisdom walks in. The person who listens sees what others don't. They catch shifts in tone, hesitations in voice, tensions behind smiles. They don't just hear words, they hear intent, and that gives them an advantage. Because the world isn't ruled by the loud, it's ruled by the aware. Most people speak out of discomfort. Silence feels like a spotlight. So they start performing, but power doesn't perform. Power waits, power watches, and then, only when the moment demands it, power speaks. Why is silence more powerful than noise? Because it creates space. Space for observation, space for clarity, space for decisions that aren't rushed but refined. In a world obsessed with speed and noise, silence is a form of rebellion and mastery. Think of great generals, wise elders, sharp negotiators. They don't babble, they wait. They listen. They speak last, and when they do, the room shifts. People lean in. Why? Because when you speak less, your words carry weight. Your voice becomes something rare. And in a noisy world, rarity commands attention. This isn't about being passive. It's about choosing your moment. It's about developing the discipline to observe first. You learn to sit with a conversation with tension, with ambiguity, without needing to fix it with words. You train your mind to watch instead of react, to understand instead of assume. Imagine this. Two people walk into a boardroom. One dominates the room, talking endlessly. The other listens, silently analyzing. When the chatter fades and the quiet one finally speaks, everyone listens. Not because of volume, but because of value. Which one are you becoming? When you speak, do your words move the room or just fill time? Do you speak to offer insight or because you're uncomfortable with silence? The goal is not to be mute, it's to be measured, to make your voice mean something. Because once people realize that when you speak it matters, they listen before you even open your mouth. So train yourself. In every conversation, resist the urge to rush in. Instead, lean back, observe, let others reveal their minds. Use silence like a weapon, like a tool, like a throne. And when you do speak, let your words land like a hammer. Because in the quiet between your words, that's where your real power lives. You are meant to be quietly dangerous. There's a kind of strength that doesn't need applause. It doesn't show up to be seen. It shows up to win. This kind of strength doesn't broadcast itself. It doesn't beat its chest or demand attention. It simply is. It watches. It waits. It sharpens in the background while the world gets distracted by noise. And when it decides to move, it moves with such clarity, such precision, that nothing can stand in its way. That's the kind of person you must become. The world has made noise its currency, but you deal in depth. You understand that certainty isn't born in crowds. It's born in solitude, in the early hours, in the late nights, in those moments when no one is watching and every choice you make is for your future self, not for applause. That's where confidence grows, not in volume, but in clarity, not in being seen, but in knowing who you are. You become quietly dangerous by doing what others avoid. You reject distraction. You cut off shallow talk. You show up to your routine like it's sacred. You master the unglamorous fundamentals while others hop from trend to trend. Every step you take is deliberate. Even your stillness has direction. Think of the tiger in the jungle. It doesn't chase noise. It doesn't seek attention. It crouches low. It blends into silence. It studies. But when it moves, every creature around it feels it. That's not performance. That's presence. You must build yourself into that kind of presence. Are you filling your days with movement that means nothing, or sharpening your edge in ways no one can see? Are your actions rooted in purpose, or are they simply performances for validation? Power doesn't come from volume. It comes from discipline, from precision, from patience, from the quiet commitment to grow when no one claps and no one cares. That's where your weapon is forged. That's where your authority is born. And when you show up, not with noise, but with undeniable mastery, people shift. Rooms adjust. Eyes turn. Not because you ask for attention, but because your silence says more than their speeches ever could. You must become the one they never saw coming. The one who doesn't shout but strikes. The one who doesn't announce but arrives. The one whose presence changes the temperature of the room. Without a word. Be quiet. Be sharp. Be dangerous. Your progress multiplies when you stop competing and start creating. Most people wake up each day inside a race they never agreed to run. They don't question it, they just start moving. They look left, they look right, measuring how fast others are going, how far others have come. They match their pace to strangers. They copy the routines, the strategies, even the dreams of people they've never met. Because they're afraid of falling behind. But behind what? Behind whom? That's the trap. The race was never yours to begin with. The goal was never to outrun others. The goal was to build something only you could bring into this world. A vision that lives inside you, not in someone else's shadow. And the moment you realize that, everything changes. Your silence becomes sacred. You stop racing. You stop chasing. You listen. You find your rhythm, your tempo, your mission. You stop trying to win a game designed by others and start designing your own. This shift is more than mental, it's spiritual. Because comparison is noise, loud, constant, draining. It drowns out your own voice. It makes you doubt your pace, your progress, your purpose. Comparison says, you're behind. Creation says, you're becoming. And becoming takes time. It takes presence. It takes faith in something deeper than performance, something truer than validation. Creation is born in stillness, not in the applause, not in the scrolling, not in the noise. It happens when you withdraw from the race, when you stop staring at what everyone else is doing and return to your own hands, your own ideas, your own raw material. You craft, you shape, you feel. You don't rush it, you don't explain it, you express it. That's where greatness lives, not in speed, but in depth. Picture an inventor alone in his dimly lit workshop. The world moves fast outside his door, but he doesn't look up. He's focused. He's sweating. He's adjusting tiny gears, drawing blueprints, testing again and again. He's not checking to see how far along his neighbor is. He's not worried about a deadline someone else set. He's creating. And when he finally steps out, he doesn't show something borrowed. He unveils something original, something only he could have made. That's what your life should feel like. Are you still running a race that belongs to someone else? Still haunted by the pace of people who aren't even on your path? Or have you chosen to slow down, go inward, and build? This world doesn't need another replica. It needs you. Fully, deeply, silently, deliberately you. Withdraw from the crowd. Silence the noise. Refuse to compete for things that don't fulfill you. Instead, pour your time and soul into the work that does. Pour it into the thing that only you understand right now. Let it evolve. Let it mature in private. Let it breathe. Because the world doesn't need more noise. It needs truth. And truth takes time to build. So stop running. Start creating. Craft something so real, so rare, that when the world finally sees it, it stops, it listens, and it remembers. Not because you were the fastest, but because you were the only one who built what you built. That's how you win a race you were never meant to run, by refusing to run it at all, and by creating something no one else can. Every great transformation happens in silence. First, before anything magnificent is seen, it must first survive the dark. Before a tree ever greets the sun, it struggles silently beneath the soil, pushing against earth, finding its strength, anchoring roots it will one day need to withstand storms. That quiet phase, invisible to the eye, is everything. And yet most people fear it. They rush to bloom before they've built a foundation. They crave recognition before they've earned resilience. But real transformation, it begins in silence. It requires disappearance before it delivers power. So you must understand this. Before you become someone strong, grounded, and unshakable, you will pass through a season where no one notices you, no one praises your effort, no one sees your work. That season isn't punishment, it's preparation. It is sacred. It is the womb of your becoming, and only the disciplined survive it. From the outside, it may look like nothing's happening. You may doubt yourself. Others might question you. But beneath that stillness, change is unfolding. Muscles are forming in the mind. Habits are hardening into steel. Ideas are being sculpted with fire and solitude. Roots are wrapping deeper into the ground, creating strength that will one day hold up the weight of your future. That strength cannot be rushed. It must be earned in private. Why must this phase be silent? Because transformation is fragile. It's filled with discomfort, uncertainty, fatigue, self-doubt. And if you expose it too early, the world will try to shrink it. People, even with good intentions, project their fears onto what they don't understand. They'll tell you to be realistic. They'll tell you to slow down. They'll tell you to choose something safer. And if you're not careful, their fear will become yours. Their limits will poison your vision. That's why you keep it sacred. You protect your transformation by staying hidden until the time is right. You show up daily, not for praise, but for purpose. You build without telling anyone. You sacrifice without seeking sympathy. You endure setbacks without explaining them. Every repetition becomes a layer of strength. Every quiet day stacks on the last until your effort becomes who you are. You don't talk about the grind, you become it. Think of the butterfly in its cocoon. From the outside, it looks dead, motionless, forgotten. But inside, a miracle is taking place. A creature is shedding its old form, rearranging itself at the cellular level. No cameras, no applause, only process. And then, one day, it breaks free. Not with noise, but with wings. It flies, not because someone pushed it, not because it was validated, but because it stayed the course in silence. Can you do the same? Can you remain faithful to your growth when no one is cheering? Can you walk through the long, dull days without quitting, without announcing, without proving? You must resist the urge to reveal what isn't ready. The world doesn't need a sneak peek of your potential. It needs the person you become after the silence, not during it. So stay in the shadows. Keep planting, keep pushing, keep sharpening. When the time comes, you won't have to introduce yourself. Your presence will say everything. Because when true transformation is complete, it doesn't ask for attention, it demands it. Silence builds discipline, and discipline builds everything. Every great life is not built on excitement. It's not carved from grand ideas or bursts of inspiration. It's forged quietly, consistently, through discipline. Not the kind people praise in public, but the kind that happens in silence. When no one sees you, when no one applauds, when you choose to do what needs to be done because it must be done. That is where the foundation is laid, and that foundation doesn't begin in movement. It begins in stillness, in silence. When you sit with yourself, stripped of distractions, stripped of validation, you begin to hear things most people spend their lives running from. You hear your own excuses, your unfinished promises, the gap between who you are and who you could be. That confrontation is not comfortable, but it is sacred. It is necessary, because within that discomfort lives your compass, your calling, your first step toward mastery. Why is silence so essential to discipline? Because silence reveals truth, and truth demands action. When there is no noise to hide behind, no crowd to impress, you meet the raw, unfiltered reality of your life. You see clearly what must change, and you can either turn away or begin. Discipline is born in that beginning, not when it's easy, not when it feels good, but when everything in you would rather delay, distract, or detour, and you still show up. You still do the work. That is how you build the edge, not by waiting for motivation, but by acting before it shows up, by setting a standard and keeping it, even when no one's watching. The bricklayer doesn't build a fortress in one day. He lays a single stone, then another, day after day, rain or shine, no cameras, no crowd, no fireworks. Just hands on stone, sweat on skin, faith in the process. And in time, what once looked like nothing becomes impenetrable. Not because he rushed, but because he refused to quit. That is discipline. Quiet, slow, deliberate effort that compounds until greatness is inevitable. You don't need more plans. You don't need more talk. You need repeatable action. You need to train your mind to do what's right, especially when it's hard. You need to say no to comfort when comfort tries to seduce you. You need to become someone who keeps promises to themselves, not because someone is watching, but because you are. This kind of power isn't loud. It doesn't brag. It doesn't It moves silently, with intent, with conviction, with unshakable resolve, because real discipline doesn't announce itself. It shows up. It sharpens in the dark, and when it's needed, it performs. So ask yourself, are you waiting for motivation to move, or have you decided to become reliable? Are you addicted to noise, to energy, to hype, to validation? Or can you operate in complete silence, knowing what you're building matters, even if no one sees it? Because here's the truth. Most people start, very few stay. Most speak of what they'll do. Few do it, quietly, daily, relentlessly. But those who do, those who lay the brick, those who face the silence, those who keep showing up when the world stops clapping, they become dangerous. They become disciplined, and with discipline comes freedom. Not freedom from effort, but freedom through it. Freedom to choose your path, to earn your confidence, to build a life that holds weight. And that kind of life, it doesn't come from dreams. It doesn't come from feelings. It comes from showing up when it's hard, when it's boring, when it's quiet. So lower the volume of the world, step into the silence, listen to what needs to be done, and then do it. Day after day, brick by brick. Because in that stillness, your edge is forged. And in that discipline, your destiny is written. People notice results, not promises. The world is saturated with noise. Voices rising every hour to declare bold intentions, set lofty goals, and broadcast what they plan to do. It's easy to speak. It costs nothing to say you're going to change your life. Start the business, write the book, or chase the dream. But over time, those words begin to lose weight. The more someone says without doing, the more invisible they become. Not because they're quiet, but because they're empty. Their presence fades under the weight of broken promises. And eventually, no one listens, not even themselves. But then, there's another kind of person, one who doesn't talk much. One who doesn't feel the need to announce every move. While others are still crafting headlines, they are quietly building the story. While the world scrolls past declarations and digital noise, this person is deep in the work. Head down, hands busy, committed to the craft. And when the results arrive, they don't need to say a word. The work speaks. This is the difference that separates the remembered from the forgotten. It's not what you say you'll do, it's what gets done. Why do so many never reach the things they claim to chase? Because they mistake enthusiasm for execution. They believe passion is enough. But passion burns out. Excitement fades. The spark that makes you say you'll do something has no fuel unless you follow it with discipline. And that discipline, it doesn't thrive on noise. It grows in silence, in repetition, in the quiet space where no one is clapping and the only voice you hear is your own saying, do it anyway. People think making a public promise holds them accountable. Sometimes it does, but more often it becomes a trap. It gives a false sense of accomplishment. You say it, people react, and for a moment it feels like progress, but nothing has been built. No weight has been moved. You've fed the ego and starved the work. You shift your life not by shouting louder, but by moving smarter. You write your goal down once, then you stop talking about it. You act on it daily. You don't check in with others for approval. You don't wait to feel inspired. You let the days stack. You let the habits settle. And one morning, without fanfare, the thing you once dreamed of is real, not because you willed it into being, but because you worked it into being. Imagine two builders. One climbs to the top of a half-finished tower and proclaims to everyone in the city, "This will be the greatest structure ever built." People cheer, cameras flash. But then weeks go by, and little changes. His voice grows quieter, his promises stale. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, the second builder says nothing. He shows up before dawn, stays after dusk. He lays each brick with care, no updates, no speeches, just work. And one day people wake up and see the tower. No announcements were needed. The result announced itself. This is your choice. Every day you're either becoming the talker or the builder. You're either adding weight to your words or stripping them of meaning. Are you announcing your vision or constructing it? Are your results visible or is your voice louder than your proof? You don't need to tell the world what you're doing. You need to do it. When the work is finished, when the outcome is undeniable, you won't have to explain. People will see it. They'll feel it. Because the greatest proof is always performance. The loudest introduction is always results. What you finish will always matter more than what you started. Anyone can start a race. Most do. Few cross the line. Fewer still do it quietly, without asking for praise. But those are the ones the world remembers, not because they demanded attention, but because they earned it. Let your work become your voice. Let your consistency become your reputation. Let your finished product become your legacy. Because when it's all said and done, people won't quote your announcements. They won't share your promises. They'll remember your impact, what you built, what you delivered, what you left behind. So step back from the noise, step into the work, and trust that silence backed by action will always speak louder than noise backed by nothing. Let your work speak. Let your results introduce you. Let what's real be louder than what's promised. That's how you become unforgettable. What you build in private will one day speak publicly. You must understand this deeply. Every silent hour, every unnoticed effort, every small task done without recognition is a seed. A seed planted not in soil, but in time. And like any seed, it does not bloom the moment it is buried. It needs space. It needs nourishment. It needs consistency. These silent hours, these moments of disciplined work away from applause, are the foundation of lives that cannot be ignored. Look closely at those who seem to succeed overnight. The author whose book suddenly explodes. The entrepreneur who came out of nowhere. The athlete who shines in one tournament and becomes a legend. What you see is the bloom. But what came before? Basements, attics, garages, early mornings, late nights, empty rooms where no one clapped, no spotlight, just repetition, just commitment. They sacrificed the comfort of now to earn the weight of later. They gave up the dopamine of being noticed so that one day, when the time was right, the results would speak for them. Most people won't do that. They can't stand the quiet. They confuse visibility with progress. So they talk, they post, they tell the world what they're about to do. They dress up ideas that were never built. They crave attention before they've produced value. And the moment that attention doesn't come, they stop. They abandon the process because applause didn't arrive fast enough. But anything truly great takes time. Not just clock time, quiet time. It takes uncelebrated days. It takes the discipline to keep returning to your work even when it feels like nothing is happening. That's why building in private matters so much. Because growth, real growth, is fragile at first. You need space to fail, space to adjust, space to experiment without commentary. You need to make mistakes without fear of judgment, to rebuild without needing to explain why. And that can only happen in silence. That silence is your shield. It protects the early stages of your vision. It gives you the room to strengthen your ideas before you expose them. The world is quick to criticize, quick to categorize. If you show your work before it's ready, you invite noise before the roots are strong enough to hold. That's why you must protect your craft. Shut the door, turn down the volume, block out the expectations and projections of others, and lose yourself in the work. Not for a deadline, not for a paycheck, not for recognition, but because you respect the process, because you know what you're building deserves your full attention. Picture the violinist who wakes before dawn, who practices scales until their fingers bleed. Just the bow, the strings, the repetition, day after day, year after year, until one evening they step onto the stage and play something that silences the room. And what moves the crowd isn't just the sound. It's the weight of invisible hours. The audience doesn't see the mornings, but they feel them. And that's the goal, not to show off your effort, but to create something that carries the depth of that effort within it. Something so refined, so alive with truth, that people feel it without you ever having to explain. So ask yourself, are you tending to your private world, Or are you leaking energy trying to prove something to people who aren't even paying attention? Are you deepening your work, or are you decorating it, hoping someone will find it impressive? You don't owe the world a preview. You owe yourself the process. You don't need to be seen before you've earned something worth showing. You don't need to prove you're great. Just become it. Quietly, completely. Let the applause come later, when it's real. Let the recognition arrive on its own, when the work demands it. But for now, honor the silence. Stay in it. Grow in it. Become in it. Because your private effort is not wasted. It's not invisible. It's accumulating. Every focused hour, every disciplined act, every decision to keep going when no one's watching, it's all stacking, preparing, strengthening. And when it's ready, when you're ready, the world will know. Not because you shouted, but because your work showed up before you said a word. That is power. That is mastery. That is the life others cannot ignore. You win quietly before you ever win loudly. Victory is not found on the stage. It is not handed out with applause or awarded under bright lights. Victory is claimed much earlier, long before the world learns your name, long before the medal is hung, long before the headlines come. It is earned in quiet repetition. It is forged in unseen hours. It is the result of 1,000 small choices you made when no one was watching and nothing was guaranteed. And that's what most people miss. They believe success arrives when recognition does, that the spotlight creates greatness. But that's the illusion. The truth is less glamorous and far more powerful. Real victory begins in habits. It's those early mornings when the alarm rings and you rise, not because you feel like it, but because you said you would. It's in the workouts completed when your body aches. The pages written when your mind feels empty. The disciplines followed on the days you'd rather rest. These small, brutal victories, quiet, consistent, and uncelebrated. That's where champions are built. But people ignore this. They want the breakthrough without the boredom. They want the reward without the repetition. Why? Because the early stages of winning don't look exciting. They're not dramatic. They don't provide a story worth posting or a scene worth filming. They're lonely. They're hard. They require patience. And they test your belief in yourself when you have no proof to point to. But if you skip them, if you avoid that quiet grind, your foundation will crack the moment the weight of pressure arrives. You'll collapse not because you lacked potential, but because you didn't respect the process. To be truly victorious, you must master your private conduct. That means honoring the promises you make to yourself. It means staying faithful to the work when no one's watching, when no one cares, when there is no reward in sight. It's about building integrity in isolation. You don't need others to hold you accountable. You become accountable. You don't need recognition to stay motivated. You become relentless. Not because it's easy, not because it's fun, but because it's right. That's what separates those who want greatness from those who become it. Picture a great oak tree. When it is young, no one notices it. It's small, unimpressive. It doesn't bloom right away. But year after year, it stays rooted. It endures wind, drought, and darkness. It doesn't rush. It deepens. While others look for shortcuts, it builds its core, and when the storm comes, it doesn't flinch. Because its strength wasn't built above ground, it was grown in silence where no one could see. That's how you must be: quiet, consistent, rooted. So ask yourself honestly, are your roots deep enough to survive the storm? Or are you hoping the wind will carry you to greatness? Because the wind doesn't lift you. It tests you. It reveals whether you've done the work when no one was watching. And if you haven't, it exposes you. That's the danger of chasing the stage without earning the soil. Too many people wait for the big moment. They believe life will change when they finally get the opportunity, the platform, the attention. But big moments don't change you. They reveal you. And if you haven't been winning in the dark, you won't win in the light. It's the person who has already paid the price in silence that gets to collect the reward in public. That's why you must stop waiting for something big to begin. Your life changes when you start winning the small moments, the ones no one sees, the ones that feel too minor to matter, but they do. They matter more than anything, so train in silence. Study when you're tired, practice when you're uninspired, build when you feel invisible, and keep going. Not because someone's watching, but because you refuse to lose. That's what integrity looks like. That's what discipline demands, and that's how victory is born. When the world finally sees what you've become, it won't be because you announced it. It will be because your work speaks louder than anything you could have said. The strongest victories are the ones no one saw coming, because they were built in silence. Let others talk. Let others wait. You've got bricks to lay. And when the time comes, when the lights finally shine, You won't have to prove yourself. You'll already be the proof. Stillness sharpens your vision like a blade. You cannot see clearly in chaos. You cannot aim well in a storm. And yet, most people try to. They run harder when lost. They speak louder when unsure. They take more action, any action, just to avoid the discomfort of stillness. But this frantic movement doesn't bring clarity. It buries it. This is why silence matters. Because silence clears the fog. It quiets the noise. It slows your breath and lets the real target rise from the haze. The truth is, most people don't fail for lack of talent. They fail because they never give their mind a chance to focus. Their energy is scattered. Their thoughts are divided. They hear too many opinions, say yes to too many things, and lose themselves in motion. They mistake activity for progress. But running in circles isn't movement forward. It's just exhaustion dressed as effort. And their vision? It doesn't disappear. It simply gets diluted, not by blindness, but by distraction. The world worships speed. Hustle culture glorifies doing more, faster, louder. But success, the kind that lasts, belongs to those who know when to slow down, who understand that stillness is not laziness. It is preparation. When you learn to sit quietly with your thoughts, something powerful happens. The surface noise dies. Deeper ideas rise. You begin to see patterns others miss. You spot timing. You connect dots that only become visible when the mind is still enough to observe. Clarity cannot be forced. It must be found. And to find it, you must create space for it to arrive. You sharpen your inner vision by building time into your life for solitude. You think without interruption. You let your mind stretch beyond the shallow waters of instant response. That is where precision is born. In the quiet, in the empty, in the slow and deliberate pause between action. Consider the hunter in the woods. One storms through the trees, hoping his noise will flush out an opportunity. He's loud, impatient, and desperate to make something happen. The other kneels in silence. He studies the wind. He listens to the birds. He waits, not out of laziness, but because he understands the rhythm of the environment. His stillness is not weakness. It is strategy. And when the moment comes, he acts with precision, with power, with purpose. This is the difference between chasing and choosing. Are you rushing from one opportunity to the next, hoping something finally works out? Or are you sitting still, observing and deciding what truly deserves your energy? Because here's the truth. You can't hit a moving target if you're always moving too. You must become still enough for the goal to come into view. You must let the dust settle. Only then can you aim with clarity. Only then can you strike with intention. And that single, focused action, born from deep silence, will often achieve more than 1,000 scattered steps ever could. Those people never reach this point. They fear silence. They confuse noise with meaning. They want to be seen doing something, anything, even if it leads nowhere. But the few who learn to wait, who learn to watch, who learn to think without urgency, those people become deadly. Because when they move, they don't miss. Their actions come from alignment, not impulse. Their progress is measured, not frantic, and their presence holds weight. Not because they speak often, but because when they do, it matters. Stillness, then, is not optional. It is a discipline, a necessity, a tool that refines your judgment and strengthens your resolve. In a world where everyone is distracted, the person who can hold their focus becomes unstoppable. The one who can think clearly while others panic, that's the one who shapes the outcome. So train yourself to be still. Sit with your thoughts instead of scrolling through someone else's. Wake up early just to think. Let your mind breathe again. In that quiet, you will find your edge. You will hear the voice that's been drowned out by all the noise. And that voice, the one deep within you, it knows exactly what to do. When the time is right, you'll act. Not out of pressure, not out of fear, but out of deep, focused clarity. And that kind of action, steady, deliberate, powerful, is almost never wrong. Silence sharpens you. Stillness focuses you. And when you move from that place, not reaction, but understanding, you become something rare. You become accurate. And in life, accuracy wins. Stand still, see clearly, and when your time comes, strike. You become dangerous when you master delayed gratification. There is a quiet, invisible strength in choosing not yet, in holding back, not because you're weak, but because you're building something too valuable to rush. In a world obsessed with speed, the one who knows how to wait becomes dangerous, not because they lack ambition, but because their patience gives that ambition teeth. It's not how loud you dream, It's how long you're willing to build before asking for anything in return. Most people don't fail because they lack talent. They fail because they sold out too early. They grabbed the low-hanging fruit. They posted the idea before it had form. They ran for the applause before they'd done the work. And they keep doing it again and again, announcing goals instead of achieving them, choosing dopamine over discipline, relief over resolve. But nothing strong grows that way. Nothing lasting survives when it's built on shallow roots and rushed timelines. That's why your restraint is rare, because you choose to stay in the shadows longer. You say not yet when others say look at me. You don't need to show every move. You don't crave instant rewards. You're not building to impress. You're building to endure. You're laying bricks carefully, deliberately, knowing that someday the world won't just see what you've built, it will stand on it. Why is patience so powerful? Because it doesn't just stretch time. It multiplies everything within it. Every hour you stay disciplined, the muscle grows, not just physical strength, but mental toughness. Every day you delay gratification, your self-trust deepens. The longer you wait without giving up, the more formidable you become. Because patience isn't passive, it's focused. It's a decision. It's the kind of internal armor that makes you unshakable when the test finally comes. Time is a great amplifier. It reveals what's built on sand and what's forged from steel. It exposes shortcuts, it unmasks pretenders, and it rewards those who are willing to wait, willing to outlast the trends, willing to keep working while others got bored. Time isn't your enemy, it's your greatest ally, if you learn to wield it. You cultivate this by doing what others refuse to do. You stay quiet when it would feel good to boast. You turn down opportunities that offer fame, but demand your integrity. You study when the crowd relaxes. You prepare when others celebrate. You don't just think about your next move, you think 10 moves ahead. You operate like a chess master, calm, still, reading the field. You make the right move only when the time is right, and when you do, it's not a reaction, it's a checkmate. There is something deeply dangerous about a person who delays their reward, who holds their fire, who walks past quick wins and keeps building, knowing that what they're after is not applause, but immortality, not a moment, but a legacy. You see it everywhere, people rushing for scraps, for attention, for proof they matter. But what they don't see is this: the throne isn't claimed by the loudest. It's claimed by the most disciplined, the one who worked in silence, the one who waited, the one who watched everyone sprint ahead, burning out, and said, I'll see you at the top eventually. And when that day comes, when your time arrives, you won't need to tell anyone. The result will announce itself, not because you were lucky, but because you were relentless, because you trained while others performed, because you built when no one believed, because you chose the long road, not because it was easy, but because it was right. So ask yourself, are you rushing towards scraps, hoping something sticks? Or are you patiently building something so solid, so undeniable, that when it's revealed, no one can look away? Delay the reward, deepen the skill, strengthen the will, say not yet until the moment is undeniable. Let your work grow under the surface, undisturbed, rooted deep. And when the time comes, don't just rise, arrive. Because the longer you can wait, the more powerful you become. Not because you waited in weakness, but because you waited in control. And power in its purest form is never rushed. It's refined. That's how you outlast them. That's how you outgrow them. That's how you win, not once, but forever. Not every battle is worth fighting. Some require walking away silently. Silence isn't always a sign of weakness. It isn't always the backdrop to building something. Sometimes it's the armor that keeps you from tearing yourself apart in battles that don't deserve you. Because not every insult needs your attention. Not every provocation deserves your energy. And not every challenge is worth answering. There is wisdom in restraint. There is strength in the person who chooses not to be dragged into chaos just to prove they can fight. In a world where people are quick to react, quick to speak, quick to defend their honor at any cost, silence feels unnatural. It feels like surrender. But true power lies in the pause, in the deep breath, in the choice to protect your peace over proving a point. When you no longer feel the need to answer every critic, to respond to every jab, or to prove your worth to those who refuse to see it, that is when you begin to grow. You grow when you stop reacting to everything that tries to shake you. You grow when you understand that not every attack is personal, and even if it is, it's not always worth your throne. Your energy is sacred, your time is limited, your mission is too great to be spent on the noise that surrounds the path. You don't throw stones back at every heckler on the road when you're headed to build something far beyond their reach. Why is silence such a powerful response in the face of conflict? Because it protects you from descending into madness. It keeps you anchored when the storm is loud. It is not passivity, it's precision. When you choose silence, you choose clarity over confusion, vision over reaction. You let the fire burn out while you continue planting seeds. You let the dust settle while you move forward with intention. You refuse to be part of every battle. And that's what makes you powerful in the ones that matter. There's a trap in always needing to defend yourself, a trap in needing to win every argument. It's a trap because it makes your strength dependent on someone else's opinion. When you're always trying to clap back, to shut someone down, to be the loudest voice in the room, you become reactive, not strategic. You lose sight of your real purpose. You start playing games that never mattered, and you don't rise, you sink. But when you're silent, not out of fear, but out of confidence, you begin to shift. You rise above the noise. You watch how quickly some fights burn out without fuel. You learn to conserve your fire for what deserves it. You become someone who holds their ground, not by yelling, but by not needing to speak at all. You cultivate this through discipline. When someone questions your character, you don't drop your values to respond. You stand taller. When someone mocks your work, you don't justify it, you make it better. You let the results speak. You let your consistency answer. You climb without announcing every step, and eventually, even your silence becomes a statement. Picture a king standing on a balcony. Below him, a crowd gathers. Angry voices rise. Insults fly. They throw words like stones, hoping to provoke a reaction. The king watches. He doesn't yell. He doesn't throw anything back. He doesn't need to. He turns, walks back inside, and gets back to ruling. That is power. Because power isn't loud. It's focused. It doesn't perform for the crowd. It builds behind the walls, and it lasts. That's what you must decide. Are you going to respond to every critic, lower yourself to every petty fight, drain your spirit to be right? Or are you going to rise, unbothered, unmoved, unreachable by those who don't matter? You don't need to prove yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You don't need to convince those who are too small to see your vision. The truth is, if they could do what you're doing, they wouldn't have time to mock it. You don't need to win every battle. You just need to win the war. And winning the war means protecting your focus, your energy, your identity. It means choosing your fights with wisdom. It means understanding that sometimes walking away isn't weakness, it's strategy, it's leadership, it's power in its highest form. The sharpest sword in your arsenal is not always action, it is restraint. The kind of restraint that makes people wonder why you didn't respond. The kind of restraint that echoes louder than any rebuttal. Because silence isn't empty, it's full of strength, full of intention, full of a quiet resolve that says, I know where I'm going. I don't need to explain it. Let others talk. Let others throw stones. You have something greater to protect. You have something greater to build. So keep your peace, protect your energy, let your silence be your strength, and remember, when the world is loud, the one who stays quiet often holds the real power. Your energy must be protected, not scattered. Every day you rise with a full but limited reserve of energy, not just in your muscles, but in your mind, in your heart, in your spirit. This is your fuel, your fire, and whether you guard it or give it away will shape everything about the day ahead. Most people don't realize this. They throw their energy at everything. They leak it through meaningless conversations, pointless arguments, and the never-ending urge to defend themselves to people who don't matter. They spend themselves trying to look strong instead of becoming strong, and by midday they wonder why they feel so hollow. You didn't come here to scatter. You came here to concentrate. You came here to focus, to build, to move with intent. And the cost of that clarity is discipline. Discipline in where your energy goes. Discipline in what you allow to enter your mental space, because every second you spend reacting to nonsense is a second stolen from your purpose. Every moment you try to convince someone who already decided not to understand you is a moment lost from creating something that speaks for itself. Most people don't burn out from doing too much of the right thing. They burn out from giving themselves to the wrong things. They try to be saviors for everyone, solutions to everything, and available at every hour. They confuse being busy with being productive. They confuse being known with being needed. And so they go around fixing what isn't theirs to fix, proving what doesn't need proof, fighting battles that don't even have a prize. They become exhausted, not because their mission is too big, but because their boundaries are too small. That's why silence is not just a habit, it's a shield. It's how you conserve your power. When you stop explaining yourself to everyone, you stop giving away your dignity, piece by piece. When you stop reacting to every opinion, every comment, every look, you stop the bleeding. You begin to stand taller. Not because you've added more strength, but because you've stopped giving it away to things that don't matter. And no, this silence isn't weakness. It's focus, it's maturity. It's knowing that not every comment needs a reply, not every conversation is an invitation, and not every challenge is a call to arms. You don't owe the world your energy. You owe your purpose your attention. And that means being selective, ruthlessly selective, about your time, your space, your circle, your thoughts. You remove yourself from noise not because you're afraid of the world, but because you've chosen to face something more meaningful, your calling. You know that chaos has a voice, and that voice is loud. But you also know that silence has a purpose, and that purpose is deep. You don't need to clap back. You don't need to comment on everything. You need to keep building. And when the world tries to distract you with storms, you keep your hands on the craft. That's the mark of someone who finishes what they start. Now picture a single candle in the middle of a storm. Every gust threatens to blow it out. Every drop of rain tries to drown its light. If that candle isn't shielded, if it flickers in response to every disturbance, it doesn't last long. But if you place it behind glass, protect it from the elements, guard its space, it burns. It burns through the night. It becomes a light in the darkness, not because it was the biggest fire, but because it was protected. You are that flame. Your energy is the light. Your purpose is the fire. And your silence, the discipline, not to respond to every gust, every shout, every storm, is the glass, the protection, the boundary that allows your brilliance to endure. Because it's not about how bright you burn for a moment. It's about how long you burn without fading. And that endurance takes strategy. It takes restraint. It takes knowing what's truly yours to carry and what you must let go. So ask yourself, are you shielding your flame, or are you letting the world blow it out one interruption at a time? Are you directing your energy like a warrior with a blade, or letting it leak like water through your hands? You weren't built to be everywhere. You weren't meant to please everyone. You weren't designed to waste your fire, proving you're not weak. You are meant to protect what's yours, your peace, your focus, your strength. And that starts with silence. It starts with pausing before you respond, with stepping away from the drama, with choosing solitude over scattered attention, with saying no more often, not to be cold, but to stay clear. You guard your mornings. You protect your routines. You say yes only to what aligns. And in doing so, you preserve your energy not just for the sake of survival, but for the sake of greatness, because that greatness will not be built in noise. It will be built in depth, in discipline, in deliberate effort protected by silence. So protect your flame. Let it burn, not in every direction, but in the right one. And when the world finally sees your light, let them realize it lasted not because it shouted, but because it endured. The less you talk, the more you hear what life is trying to teach you. There are moments in life when the answers are all around you, hidden not in the noise, but in the quiet, not in the explanations, but in the silence that follows. Most people never discover this. They are too loud, too rough. They feel the need to speak, to justify, to fill every space with movement or noise. They believe clarity will come from more effort, more words, more doing. But clarity does not shout, it whispers. Think of a person walking through a library, shouting their thoughts aloud, demanding to know the secrets of the world. They never stop to read the books around them. They don't hear the quiet messages waiting on every shelf because they're too consumed by their own voice. That's how many people live. They talk over truth. They rush past their own transformation. They dismiss pain as a problem to solve rather than a messenger to learn from. And because of this, they stay stuck. But you, if you are to grow, you must do something most refuse to do. Listen, not just to people, but to patterns, to instinct, to your own conscience. When it tries to guide you in the stillness of the night, you must listen to life the way a sailor listens to the wind, not by shouting at the sea, but by reading the subtle changes in the current. Success, peace, and wisdom are often not found in the loud victories, but in the quiet adjustments. Stillness teaches, but only when you let it. The world is constantly speaking through small signs. A tension in your chest that tells you something's off. A repeated frustration that shows you where your boundaries are broken. A moment of silence that feels heavier than noise. Most people ignore these signs. They speed past them. They jump from one goal to the next like stepping stones, terrified to pause in between, but because they never pause, they never reflect. And what isn't reflected upon can't be refined. What isn't refined is repeated. And so they go in circles, impressive on the outside, but unchanged on the inside. There is power in slowing down, in setting aside time, not to plan your next achievement, but to simply be, to observe the day, your choices, your habits, your feelings. This is not wasted time, it is alignment time. The time you take to watch your life is the time that prevents you from wasting years. You see what's working, you notice what isn't, you begin to hear the difference between your ego and your intuition, and most importantly, you begin to ask better questions. Because life doesn't always give you answers right away, it gives you questions. Questions that deepen if you sit with them. Questions that sharpen your direction, strip your illusions, and whisper the truth underneath the noise. But most people want fast answers, so they rush. They avoid the discomfort of silence. They drown the question in distractions. But silence is where the deepest answers live. Think of a traveler lost in the forest. One man panics. He yells for help. He crashes through the brush. He exhausts himself, and in all his noise, he overlooks the signs. The bent twig, the faint path, the moss growing on one side of the tree. Another man sits quietly. He breathes. He listens. He watches. Slowly, a bird call reveals the direction of the river. The wind shifts. The sunlight hits a certain tree. He sees what the frantic man missed, not because he was smarter, but because he was quieter. This is not just about being calm. It's about being aware. Stillness sharpens your awareness. It connects you with your inner compass, the one you were born with but buried under layers of noise. The more you listen, the more you begin to trust it. You begin to recognize when something doesn't feel right. You begin to sense the pull of what's true. And that is the greatest guidance you'll ever receive. Not from books, not from people, but from the alignment of your own inner wisdom with what life is trying to show you. This doesn't mean isolation. It doesn't mean doing nothing. It means doing the right thing in the right state of mind. You can work, build, and act, but from a place of clarity, not confusion. From a center of silence, not a storm of emotion. That kind of action is powerful. It doesn't just move things, it moves the right things. So ask yourself, are you rushing past your own answers? Are you speaking over the guidance that life is quietly offering? Are you filling your days with noise just to avoid the quiet that would change you? Because the truth is, most of the transformation you're seeking won't come in the form of thunder or applause. It will come in a moment when you sit with yourself, alone, and listen. A moment when the world is still and your mind is clear enough to notice what was always there, waiting. And when that moment comes, don't ignore it, don't rush it, don't speak too quickly to fill the space. Instead, lean in, stay a little longer, because the silence you fear may be the answer you need. Let the world be noisy. Let others chase and shout and scramble. You become the one who listens, the one who learns in silence what others miss in sound. And in doing so, you will move through life with a kind of wisdom that no storm can shake. Slow down, listen deeper. The voice you're waiting for isn't lost. It's just been waiting for you to be quiet enough to hear. Every time you choose discipline and silence, you break the chains of your old self. You are not in a battle against the world. The real war, the one that matters, is internal. You are fighting the version of yourself that wants to pull you back. The voice that tells you to sleep in when you said you'd rise early. The one that makes excuses when discipline knocks. That version of you is familiar. It's comfortable. It whispers softly, promises ease, and seduces you into staying the same. And it's patient. It waits for you to be tired, disappointed, or discouraged, then strikes. If you're not careful, it becomes your ruler. But you weren't meant to be ruled by weakness. You were meant to master it. The only way to win this war is not by shouting about change, but by becoming change, silently. You don't defeat the old self in a loud declaration. You defeat it through consistent, quiet action, repeated discipline, the kind that nobody sees. No one will praise you for waking up at 5 a.m. to train your body or study your craft. No one will celebrate your decision to say no to temptations while others indulge. No one will hand you a medal for going to bed early, for doing the hard thing again and again. But that's where the chains break. not in public victories, but in private battles. In the moments when you're tempted to fall back and you don't. In the times when your old self shows up and you choose not to listen. Most people lose this war long before they even realize it exists. They blame the world, their circumstances, their lack of time, their upbringing. But the truth? The truth is, they chose ease over evolution. Every time life demanded more from them, they retreated into their familiar self, the one built by habits that no longer serve them. So they live and they die, never knowing who they could have become. But not you. You refuse to go back, not because it's easy, but because you remember what it felt like to be stuck, to be ashamed, to feel powerless. You remember who you were when you gave into comfort, and you've tasted enough of that mediocrity to know it leads nowhere. So you change, not all at once, but one act of discipline at a time. You wake up a little earlier. You do the reps even when your body protests. You read the page even when you're tired. You keep the promise even when no one else would notice if you broke it. And as you do, something changes, not just in your results, but in your identity. Discipline stops being a burden. It becomes who you are. Like breathing, like blinking, like moving forward. You stop asking, should I, and start saying, I must. You no longer need motivation because habit has taken its place. You no longer beg for clarity because you've trained your feet to move forward even in the fog. Picture a sculptor in a quiet studio. Day after day, he strikes the chisel against a cold, unshaped block of stone. To the world, it looks like nothing is happening. Each strike is small, each movement subtle. But he knows, he trusts that something is forming. One day, the curve of a face appears, a shoulder, a hand, and one day the block is gone. In its place stands something undeniable, a masterpiece, not because of a single stroke, but because of 10,000 quiet, committed ones. That's your life. That's your potential, but only if you chip away daily. Only if you stop wishing and start working. Only if you stop waiting for inspiration and start forcing yourself to act when you least feel like it. The days you feel resistance the most are the days your old self is testing you, waiting to see if you'll surrender again. But you won't, not anymore, because you've realized something vital. Change don't break in crowds. They don't snap in noise. They're shattered in the quiet, in painful, personal, and private moments of decision. When you stand face to face with your excuses and say, no more. When you feel the weight of doubt pressing on your back and you still take the next step. That's when freedom is forged. You walk freer every time you deny ease and choose growth. Every time you embrace discomfort instead of retreating into the familiar. Every time you prove to yourself that you're not the same person you once were. You are new. You are becoming. Not loudly, but relentlessly. Understand this. The real reward of discipline is not just the achievement. It's the transformation. It's knowing you've become someone who no longer runs, who no longer breaks at the first sign of struggle. It's the power you feel when you realize your past no longer owns you. That version of you, the weak one, the lazy one, it still exists, but it doesn't lead anymore. You've taken the reins back. So if you're tired, good, that means you're working. If it's hard, excellent, that means you're growing. If no one notices, perfect, that means it's real. Because the moment you choose to fight, not the world, not your circumstances, but yourself, is the moment you begin to win in the places that matter. Keep chipping, keep moving, keep forging. Your masterpiece is forming, not out there, but in your value rises when you stop giving everyone access. You cannot be powerful and always available. That truth may feel uncomfortable in a world that rewards constant connection, rapid replies, and visible hustle. But real power doesn't chase, it chooses. It doesn't flood rooms, it fills them with presence, then exits with purpose. If everyone can reach you, influence you, question you, and drain you at will, then you are not leading, you're reacting. You are not moving the world, you are being moved by it. You are not a lighthouse, you are a lantern passed from hand to hand, slowly dimming. Understand this, value rises with rarity. The more accessible you are, the more people treat you as common. When you tolerate every form of noise, you drown out your own voice. When you explain your every move, you weaken the weight of your decisions. When you make yourself available to everyone, you lose yourself in everyone's demands. This isn't isolation, it's erosion. Bit by bit, piece by piece, your clarity disappears under the pressure to please, respond, and justify. Look around. The most respected voices don't speak constantly. The most effective leaders are not those who are always visible, but those who are always intentional. Their presence is sharp, their absence is felt. Their influence is not in being everywhere, but in being unforgettable. And that comes from scarcity, not because they're trying to be distant, but because they're focused, because they're building something so meaningful they cannot afford to be distracted by everything. You must learn this discipline, not from ego, but from necessity. You must become rare, not by withdrawing from life, but by mastering your direction. Know what you're building, and once you know, protect it with your life. Protect your energy the way a blacksmith guards the fire that shapes the blade. Protect your time as a sculptor protects the hours it takes to perfect a single curve. You do not owe the world your constant attention. You owe your purpose your full devotion. This means stepping back, not out of fear, but out of respect for yourself, your craft, your calling. It means not answering every message the moment it arrives. It means resisting the urge to be constantly visible, constantly pleasing, constantly reacting. Let people wonder. Let them not know your every move. That mystery is not manipulation. It is protection. You are not withholding out of pride, but out of principle. You are creating space for depth, and from that depth, your power will rise. People remember what's rare. They listen more closely to the quiet one who speaks with intent than to the loud one who speaks without pause. They notice the presence that enters with purpose and leaves without explanation. That's how weight is built. That's how impact is made. When you stop giving everything away, you become something people must reach for. And in reaching, they grow. In your restraint, you lead. But most people don't do this. They dilute themselves. They spread themselves thin, trying to be everything for everyone. They explain too much. They speak without reflection. They show up in places that drain them just to be seen, liked, or included. And every time they do, their identity weakens. They lose the sharp edge of who they are. They become fog present everywhere, but solid nowhere. Not you. You must resist that pull. You must say no more often, not to be rude, but to be rooted. You must disappear from the noise so you can reappear with substance. You must guard your hours like treasure, because they are. Every hour you give to something misaligned is an hour stolen from your mission. Every conversation that drains your focus is a tax on your spirit. And you cannot afford to be taxed by trivial things. Think of a lighthouse. It stands high on a cliff, shining through storms and darkness. Its light is steady, not scattered. It doesn't run down to the beach and wave flags for attention. It simply shines from a distance, strong, reliable. And because of that distance, because of that stillness, it becomes a guide, a landmark, a force. You never see a lighthouse trying to be the city. You never see it begging to be seen. It doesn't move. It anchors. Are you anchoring yourself, or are you drifting into every current that calls your name? Are you allowing your presence to be preserved, or are you handing it out like a flyer, hoping someone will take notice? If your presence is to matter, it must be protected. Your words must be chosen. Your time must be filtered. Your focus must be non-negotiable. This doesn't make you arrogant. It makes you honest. It means you know your worth. It means you're building something so valuable within that not everyone deserves access to it. It means you're living with design, not default. Silence is not a weakness, it's a weapon. It gives you space to think, to craft, to evolve. It allows you to watch the world without always responding to it. It trains you to speak only when it matters, and when you do, people will listen, because they'll know that your voice comes from depth, not impulse. From reflection, not reaction. And sometimes your absence will speak louder than your presence ever could. People will feel the space you once filled. They'll notice the stillness you leave behind. They'll wonder what you're building in silence. And that wonder creates weight. You don't need to be seen at every event. You don't need to respond to every comment. Your discipline will speak, your restraint will echo, and your results, they'll answer every question for you. So stop explaining, start elevating. Let them wonder where you went. Let them ask why you're so quiet. Let them fill in the blanks with curiosity while you fill your time with creation. Don't fear being misunderstood. Fear being misused. Don't chase constant presence. Chase powerful presence. Because in the end, the ones who change the world are not those who are always available. They are those who guard their mind, protect their purpose, and preserve their presence until the moment it's needed. And when that moment comes, they don't just appear, they arrive. When you focus on yourself, you remove the limits others put on you. Every time you look outside yourself for permission, approval, or direction, you give away something sacred. You begin to shrink, not in body, but in soul. You slowly mold yourself into someone else's reflection, bending under the weight of their fears, their doubts, their limitations. Their small thinking becomes your prison. You hesitate not because your heart is unsure, but because your eyes are fixed on faces that don't carry your vision. You delay your purpose, water down your power, and become a stranger to your own potential. But the moment you turn inward, everything changes. The world may call it selfish, but focusing on yourself is not selfish, it's survival. It is an act of reclaiming your life from the grip of noise, confusion, and dependence. It's a declaration that you refuse to live as a copy of someone else's comfort zone. Because the truth is, the world will always try to define you with labels, with expectations, with old measurements that never quite fit. It will tell you who you're allowed to be, how far you're allowed to go, and what's realistic for someone like you. But you're not here to wear their labels. You're here to become who you were meant to be, not who they need you to be. And that becoming demands one thing above all: focus. Not on them, on you. So why do people fear turning inward? Why do they avoid silence, resist solitude, and drown their thoughts in distractions? Because self-focus requires responsibility. It's not easy to meet your reflection without excuses, to look at your patterns without blame, to admit that you are both the architect and the wrecking ball of your own life. But within that truth lies something most never find: freedom. Because if you created it, you can change it. And that power, that ownership, it's the beginning of becoming unstoppable. You start not with grand moves, but with better questions. Not what do they think of me, but what do I think of me? Not how do I fit in, but what do I stand for? These questions strip away illusion. They remove the need for applause. They take you to the root, your own voice. And from that root, you begin to build a life that's real. A life rooted in purpose, not popularity. In conviction, not consensus. Picture a blacksmith in a quiet forge, alone, focused. Every strike of the hammer is deliberate. He's not checking if the crowd approves. He's not asking for permission to create. He's working in silence, turning fire and steel into something lasting. Others mock him, call him obsessed, rigid, strange, until they need his sword, until they feel the strength of something crafted in solitude. Then they come knocking. But by then, he doesn't need their validation. He never did. He knew what he was building, and that is what made him powerful. Now ask yourself, are you in your forge, or are you on their stage? Are you building your truth, or are you rehearsing their script? Because the longer you wait for someone to understand your path, the longer you stay stuck. You were not born to be a translation of someone else's fear. You were born to be a force. But that force only emerges when you stop asking the world to make room for you and start carving your place with your own hands. This isn't a call to isolation. It's a call to alignment. To stop scattering your attention trying to be everything for everyone. To stop adjusting your soul to match rooms that were never built for your voice. When you focus on yourself, you stop reacting, you start creating, you stop explaining, you start becoming. Slowly, steadily, deliberately, you evolve. And not because they saw it, but because you felt it. And here's the paradox. The more you focus on your internal world, the more your external world begins to shift. Not because it changes you, but because you've changed. You move differently. You speak with more weight. You attract what aligns and lose what doesn't. People may say you've changed. Let them. Change is the price of elevation. And when your focus becomes fierce, your growth becomes inevitable. That's when you rise beyond limits. Because no one can stop what they didn't start. No one can sabotage what they didn't build. When your strength comes from within, it can't be taken. And when that power becomes yours, you never give it back. So stop looking outward for your worth. Stop scanning faces for your direction. Turn inward. Stand in front of the forge. Pick up the hammer. Ask the hard questions. Build what the world can't see yet. Let them mock. Let them misunderstand. Let them stay comfortable. You've got work to do. In silence, in focus, in fire. Silence makes you immune to praise and criticism alike. The moment you begin to depend on praise, you hand over the reins of your strength. You give others the power to dictate your worth. And whether you rise or fall depends not on your own conviction, but on the noise outside. The moment you fear criticism, you start to hesitate. You pull back. You tiptoe through your own potential. But the moment you become unaffected by either the praise or the insult, you unlock a rare and potent freedom. a freedom that cannot be bought, borrowed, or begged for, a freedom that is forged only in silence. Silence is not passive, it's not a void, it's a discipline, a mental fortress where you train yourself to no longer flinch at applause or wince at judgment. When you're constantly praised, it's tempting to coast, to believe the work is done. You become complacent, soft, lulled into a comfort that slows your edge. And when you're constantly criticized, if you're not rooted, you begin to doubt. You question your direction. You shrink your ambition to fit someone else's limited view. In both scenarios, whether flattered or attacked, you give others access to your internal compass. And as long as your emotional state hinges on the shifting winds of public opinion, your path will never truly be your own. You will be a puppet pulled by invisible strings, celebrating when they clap and collapsing when they boo. Why do most people never reach their full potential? It's not a lack of talent, it's not fate, it's because they chase applause. They become addicted to being noticed, validated, liked. Their identity begins to depend on how others respond. And the tragedy, the moment applause fades, they stop. They question themselves, or worse, they give up. And when criticism comes, they crumble. But greatness, it doesn't rise and fall with the crowd. It keeps moving. It stays the course. It is immune to praise and resilient in the face of judgment. That level of inner strength doesn't come overnight. It's built quietly. It's built in the early mornings when no one sees you working. It's built in the hours you spend refining your craft, not for the applause, but because it matters to you. It's built in the lonely moments when everyone else has gone home and you're still there, focused, grounded, intentional. You stop asking, will they like this? And start asking, is this true to me? You become rooted in purpose. That is your anchor. You do what's right, not what's easy, not what's popular. You don't show up to impress anyone. You show up to express something real, something earned, something worthy. Praise becomes like the wind. It passes through you. It doesn't lift you, and it doesn't slow you. And criticism? It becomes feedback, not a verdict, not a death sentence. It sharpens you like a blade passed over stone, but it does not break you. It does not define you. Picture a ship sailing through a storm. The waves crash against its sides. The wind howls like 1,000 voices screaming at once. But the ship does not argue with the weather. It doesn't plead for calm. It stays on course. Why? Because the captain knows where he's going. He trusts the map. He trusts the mission. He doesn't need the ocean's approval to steer forward. That's what you must become. Not the storm, not the sails, but the captain. Centered, unshaken, focused. Ask yourself, are you chasing approval or are you anchoring to your mission? Are you allowing compliments and criticisms to steer your ship off course? Or are you navigating by your own inner compass, set to your values, your purpose, your truth? Because here's the reality. If you live for their praise, you will die by their rejection. If you rise only when they clap, you will fall when they stay silent. And the world will go silent eventually. It always does. The spotlight fades. The compliments stop. And all that remains is you, your work, your choices, your soul. If those aren't strong, if those aren't built to last, then no amount of praise can save you. When you no longer crave their applause and no longer fear their judgment, you become unstoppable. You stop living reactively and start leading intentionally. You stop proving, performing, posturing, and you start creating, refining, becoming. And what you build from that place, it's indestructible, because nothing outside of you can shake what is solid within. So train yourself in the silence. Let the world think what it wants. Let them praise, let them doubt. But you keep showing up. You keep moving forward. Not because they cheer, not because they boo, but because you must. Because the mission matters more than the moment. Because purpose is louder than praise. Because you were not born to be someone's echo. You were born to be whole. Let your silence be your strength. Let your stillness be your answer. Let your results do the talking. And when they come looking for explanation, validation, or permission, you'll be too far ahead to hear them. Not out of pride, but out of peace. You finally learned what most never do. Praise is pleasant. Criticism is painful. But neither one controls you anymore. Your future is quietly watching the choices you make in secret. There is a version of you waiting, not in some distant dream, but in the space between your choices. A stronger you, a wiser you, a deeper, more grounded, more fulfilled version of who you could be. And that version doesn't come crashing in like a lightning bolt. It's not summoned by some magical moment of glory or an applause-filled achievement. No, that version is shaped slowly, patiently, in the quiet. It's forged not in the public eye, but in private resolve. In those moments where nothing is expected of you, but you demand more of yourself anyway. This is the truth that most people miss. They think their future is determined in the big, public moments, in the promotions, the performances, the dramatic decisions, but it's not. The future is built in the ordinary, in the forgotten hours, in early mornings where the world is still asleep, but you're up, working, learning, becoming. It's crafted in late nights when you could easily give in to rest, but instead, you go a little further. These quiet hours are the anvil and hammer of transformation. These are the bricks of your destiny. Why do the silent choices matter more than the loud ones? Because the loud moments are often deceiving. In the spotlight, anyone can pretend. Anyone can summon the energy for a single performance, a single push. But that's not mastery. That's theater. The real measure of who you are is found in what you do when no one's around, when the applause has faded, when no one's cheering you on. That's when it becomes real. It's easy to be disciplined when others are watching. It's easy to be driven when someone is holding you accountable. But what about when it's just you? Just you and the voice inside your head telling you to quit, to delay, to indulge just this once. That's where the future is decided. Not on the stage, but in the shadows. Not when you're praised, but when you're alone and tempted to take the easy way. And you don't. You master your future by mastering these invisible choices. You choose to read when your body tells you to scroll. You choose to train when your mind tempts you with comfort. You choose to study, to write, to build, to reflect. When there's no one to impress, no trophy to win, no audience to validate your effort. Because deep down, you know the truth. Every small decision stacks. Every act of discipline becomes a seed. And eventually, those seeds grow into results so undeniable, people will call it overnight success. But you'll know better. You'll know it was earned in the dark. Picture a farmer working the fields under the moonlight. He plants not for applause, but for outcome. He doesn't care who's watching. He cares about the harvest. He understands that what's done in silence speaks the loudest eventually. So he keeps planting, quietly, faithfully. And when the harvest comes, it's not a surprise, it's a return. Now ask yourself, are you planting your future in the dark, or are you waiting for daylight to start? Are your unseen choices building you or betraying you? It's easy to talk about growth. It's easy to plan for greatness. But your future self isn't listening to your speeches or reading your goals. Your future self is watching your actions, not your posts, not your plans, your habits, your integrity. What you do when no one's looking. That's where your transformation begins. And here's the powerful thing. The more you build in silence, the less you'll need to prove in noise. When your discipline becomes a part of you, when consistency becomes your nature, you begin to rise without force. You begin to win without begging. You begin to grow into someone unshakable because your foundation wasn't built on validation, it was built on truth. This is the path of real change. Not sudden, not spectacular, but steady. And it's available to you right now, not next week, not when circumstances are perfect, but in this moment, in your next decision. Because it's not just about who you want to become, it's about how you become them. And the how is always hidden in the small, the silent, the daily. So ask yourself again, when the world isn't watching, who are you? When there's no finish line, no fanfare, no feedback, do you still show up? That's the test. That's the forge. And the answer matters more than any public success ever will, because the future you, that stronger, wiser, richer you, is not waiting for luck. It's waiting for proof. Proof that you're serious, that you're committed, that you're willing to do the work not just when it's easy, but especially when it's not. So make the silent choices count. Choose the discomfort that sharpens you. Choose the habits that stretch you. Choose the work that others skip. Because each time you do, you get closer, not to perfection, but to purpose. Not to applause, but to peace. And one day you'll look back, not with regret, but with awe. Because you'll know that version of you dreamed about, you didn't stumble upon it, you built it. Quietly, relentlessly, brick by unseen brick.